In our video about Joost Klein last year, we said this.
And maybe he can finally let go of the trauma that has fueled his art since the very beginning.
Joost liked that quote so much, he sampled it in the first single from his 2025 album, Unity.
Who will he be without it? That chapter hasn't been written yet.
I mention this for two reasons. First, I was looking for an excuse to brag about it. Secondly, we now have an answer to the question of what Joost would rap about once he'd moved past the trauma of being orphaned. It's the trauma of being disqualified from Eurovision and investigated by the Swedish police.
Joost Klein, je bent gedisqualificeerd. What?
Many of the songs on Unity refer to the Eurovision fiasco. For instance, the track Why Not, with like 8 question marks, was named after his infamous outburst in the semifinal 2 press conference.
Why not? Why not? Why not?
The album's final pre-launch single was United by Music, and it's a collaboration with Tommy Cash, Estonia's Eurovision enfant terrible from this year. So while this isn't technically a Eurovision song, it brings together two artists that we have spent a long time thinking about and appears to be a commentary about Eurovision.
That's bait.
So as Joost would say, why not? It's not like there are a few dozen real Eurovision songs I should look at or anything. I'm Matt Belinkie, and this is Overthinking Eurovision. First off, yes, I did hear the song's final line.
This song is so funny.
It's not that deep.
Just in case we missed it, they put it on the YouTube description and on Instagram. But first off, I can overthink anything, okay? I watched a 4-hour-long academic conference on The Boss Baby. Secondly, you can't always trust these lyrics. Take this one, for example.
The shake is not a drink, it's a state of mind.
I don't believe you. I think the shake is a drink. A strangely enticing drink. But speaking of drinks, here's something Tommy Cash said about his Eurovision song Espresso Macchiato that I think applies to United by Music too. I don't like it when an artist has to explain his art. Art is made to be understood individually. I want every person to listen to the song, see the performance, and find our meaning. There are 99 meanings, choose one. This is generally good advice about art. At the same time, it's kind of funny to talk about the lyric, no stresso, no need to be depresso, like it's Paradise Lost. Anyway, I don't have the time to go over 99 meanings because I have a pile of academic studies about orgasms in Finland to review, but I can give you a few. Not orgasms, meanings. Option 1. This is a song about how the EBU sucks. The music video begins like this.
The World Peace Committee has had one mission: to establish peace, love, and unity.
Where have I heard that before?
Love, peace, peace, party for everybody.
Then the talking pigeon tells us that the World Peace Committee has failed in its mission, so they're drafting Joost and Tommy to give it a shot. The two men get in the Peacemobile and drive through a sea of angry people just waiting to tear them to shreds. And then they do what the EBU demands all Eurovision artists do, refuse to take a side publicly to the point of absurdity.
I wanna vote Kamala and also vote Trump.
Just to be clear, you cannot vote Kamala and also vote Trump. But if you want to go to Eurovision, you are not allowed to have a political opinion or really much of an opinion about anything. Let me quote from the official Eurovision Code of Conduct. Participants can express themselves freely in a personal capacity, but must avoid linking political views to their ESC participation. They must not instrumentalize the ESC or use the ESC as leverage by making political statements or causing controversies, thereby shifting focus away from the event's purpose, which is celebrating music and promoting unity. What this statement is basically saying is that while technically you are free to have political opinions, if you say them out loud after you have been selected, you risk disqualification. Once you join the Eurovision circus, you are forced into being one of their clowns.
Do you ever think that the world will be so safe that the people never die and nobody got AIDS?
On March 28, 2024, a group called Queers for Palestine published an open letter calling on UK artist Ali Alexander to withdraw in order to show his opposition to Israel. The next day, Ali and 9 other artists signed a joint statement saying, quote, We do not feel comfortable being silent in light of the war in Gaza. It was pretty much the mildest political statement you can imagine, asking for peace, the safe return of hostages, and an end to anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. Nevertheless, the BBC immediately threw Ali under the bus, and of course Queers for Palestine didn't love the statement either. I think it's difficult to imagine the pressure these artists are under to muzzle themselves, even when their fan bases and their very identities demand that they speak up. In the winner's press conference after Eurovision 2024, Nemo didn't hide their annoyance that audience members were not allowed to bring non-binary flags to the arena.
I had to smuggle my flag in because Eurovision said no, and I did it anyway, so I hope some other people did that too, but come on.
And maybe that's exactly what United by Music is meant to satirize. Joost and Tommy are being forced to spout these nonsense rhymes while a crowd with literal torches and pitchforks gathers around them. At the end of the video, Joost places a flower in the barrel of a tank in a reference to a famous photograph from 1967, but look at the way he does it. He's shaking in fear because he knows what's coming. And that's probably how Ali felt last year. A couple weeks before Eurovision, he gave an interview to The Times, and he burst into tears more than once. So, if United by Music were an Ali Alexander song, the meaning would be crystal clear and this video would be over. But let's take a look at who signed that March 29th letter that Ali and the other Eurovision artists put out in support of the Palestinians. Nemo, Bambi, Windows 95 Man. I don't see Joost's name on here. And in the year since Joost got the Euro boot, he hasn't used his newfound freedom to get all Greta Thunberg on us. In fact, both Joost and Tommy have a long history of trying to be as apolitical as possible. In February 2025, to announce the release of his album, Joost posted, "I remember people from Afghanistan praying in our living room. I remember the African weddings I attended as a kid. Politics never gave me a hug. People did." But what about the why not outburst we talked about earlier? Wasn't that a political stand? Not really. The Israeli singer was asked if her presence was putting other artists in danger, and the moderator jumped in to tell her she didn't have to answer the question.
You don't have to answer that question if you don't want to. Why not?
His anger was because Israel was politicizing the contest and therefore putting all the artists in an impossible position. As for Tommy Cash, he's talked about wanting to be apolitical since the very beginning of his career. As an artist, it's dangerous to take any political side. I deal with escapism. My point is to take you away from normality and the 9-to-5 job mentality. I strive for a place where there's no such thing as politics. Now, most media outlets interpreted United by Music as an anti-Eurovision song. Certainly there's at least one line from Joost that seems to support this theory.
I don't want to go to court.
But the irony is Joost and Tommy are incredibly aligned with the Eurovision worldview. They both believe in a transnational community that shuns politics in favor of good vibes. So let's consider option 2 for interpreting this song. These are their actual opinions.
I want to fly to Kiev and go to Moscow.
When the full-scale Russia-Ukraine war began in 2022, Tommy Cash canceled scheduled concerts in both Kiev and Moscow. He told the press, "I am a strong opponent of any military aggression. This is an extremely sad situation, and I really hope that soon I will be able to return to these beautiful countries to perform my new music there." So yeah, Tommy does want to fly to Kiev and go to Moscow. And why wouldn't he? He's Russian on his dad's side. His girlfriend is from Moscow, although this is probably a great excuse not to have to meet her parents. And as for Joost, he got in trouble last year for a song he recorded in 2022 with these lyrics.
I want a Russian lady. I want some Russian babies.
In response, the Dutch national broadcaster said this: Joost has never made a political statement with his songs. Joost creates music with people who think like him. He likes to use satire, metaphors, absurdity, and exaggeration to express himself, simply playing with language. In other words,
But I just want the hardcore.
Now, I suppose it is possible that Joost and Tommy made a song about how much they resent being forced into being apolitical, even though they are notoriously apolitical, but it would be a little odd.
What do you want to talk about?
can't think of anything.
Then what are you complaining about?
In option 2, the bad guys are not the EBU. In fact, Joost and Tommy are basically on the same page as the EBU. The bad guys are the fans who react to this message of peace and fun with anger. In April 2024, over 250 Dutch artists signed a petition imploring Joost to boycott Eurovision. Joost told the media, "I am a small part of the machine. I think the letter should not have been addressed to me. If I could save the world as a world leader, I would do it now." He's just a soldier drafted by the World Peace Committee, and he resents the fact that he's become a target. In fact, Joost was kind of pissed about the protesters invoking the memory of his dead father to try to pressure him into dropping out. Their petition said, "Your father's utopia does not exist for Palestinians," to which he replied, "Too bad they're using my father, but it is what it is." And it would not surprise me one bit if Joost was still furious at the protesters who insisted that they knew how to honor his father's memory better than he did. But here's why option 2 doesn't really hold up either. Some of the lyrics feel so over the top that they can't really be their actual opinions. For instance,
The less get less and the more get more. But it, I just want the hardcore.
Joost laughs off the concern that the rich get rich and the poor get poor. But elsewhere on his album, he's pretty worked up about this exact thing.
Evil corporations ruling all the nations. Not on my watch.
And Tommy's line about never going back to McDonald's?
I used to love McDonald's, but I'm never going back.
Well, only 5 days before this song premiered, he celebrated his SD Law victory by doing exactly that.
He lied to us through song.
More to the point, if this is supposed to be a proud expression of their real opinions, why do they look and sound so dumb? I mean, everyone looks and sounds dumb here. The EBU is dressed up like the Suicide Squad, the singers are dressed like jesters, the protesters are dressed like the villagers from Shrek. So who is right and who is wrong? Exactly. Option 3, baby. In 2019, Tommy Cash and the fashion designer Rick Owens held a joint exhibition at the Kumu Art Museum in Estonia. The name of the show was The Pure and the Damned. That sounds like another one of those dichotomies in United by Music, doesn't it? I want to be pure and also be damned. The art critic Shamima Binte Rahman had an interesting interpretation of the show. She thought it was meant to challenge binary politics. That feels like a message that was recently echoed in the Espresso Macchiato video. And maybe United by Music has a similar anti-extremism message. As Ralph Fiennes recently put it,
"Certainty is the great enemy of unity. Certainty is the deadly enemy of tolerance."
At the beginning of the song, the EBU stand-ins chant,
We want peace, they want war.
which is an Orwellian oversimplification of things. But the protesters aren't any better. They're supposed to want peace, but at the end of the song, they go all World of Tanks. Speaking of the Suicide Squad,
I cherish peace with all my heart. I don't care how many men, women, and children I need to kill to get it.
and Joost and Tommy don't let themselves off the hook either. Tommy's most poetic line,
I wanna take the piss, but I gotta take a dump.
is basically saying he's full of crap. A lot of these lyrics aren't about wanting peace, they're about wanting everything, like a spoiled child.
I wanna buy a Samsung in the Apple Store.
You can't buy Samsung in the Apple Store. And the end result of wanting it both ways is that nothing can make you happy. I don't think it's a coincidence that the two men are dressed in black and white, because this whole thing is about the silliness of black and white oppositional thinking.
I know that I'm white, but I wish that I was.
To me, the real key to the song is the final image, the yin-yang. This is a symbol of balance. It represents the idea in Chinese philosophy that either extreme is inadequate and even harmful. The goal is to achieve a synthesis of both sides, each one revealing the truth of the other. Now, maybe you can't vote Kamala and also vote Trump, but you can see that Gen Z is tilting rightward and consider what it is about Trump that appeals to them. You shouldn't just hardcore and ignore horrific inequality, but you also shouldn't be such a party pooper that you won't let people have fun unless they pass your political litmus test. And you shouldn't get up on a high horse about how your singing contest will bring about world peace, but the idea of uniting people with music is something both these guys actually believe in. And here's one final option for you. Maybe the song is just about these two guys becoming friends. They make an interesting pair. Joost is painfully sincere. Every song he releases is like a page from his diary that you could dance to. Tommy is a complete fabrication, like a combination of Prince and John Waters. The yin-yang that ends this video represents their friendship, because in some ways, this is a union of polar opposites. Come to think of it, this picture of their Paris Fashion Week outfits was kind of foreshadowing this. A jacket and pants are also two halves of a unified whole.
Corporate needs you to find the differences between this picture and this picture. They're the same picture.
Now, a lot of you may think I'm missing the most obvious interpretation of all. These guys are just trolling.
Some men aren't looking for anything logical. Some men just want to watch the world burn.
Making fun of everybody and saying shocking things isn't meaningful or brave. It's just juvenile and infuriating. But the reason I wanted to make this video is because I think United by Music is refreshing. It absolutely might be trolling, but it could also mean 98 other things. And I think it might do us all some good not to be spoon-fed the correct interpretation. In March 2025, The New Yorker published an essay by the novelist Namwali Serpal. She talks about how popular art seems to be abandoning anything ambiguous in favor of clear, definitive statements. Complaints about our inability to read, interpret, or discern irony, subtlety, and nuance are as old as art. What feels new is the expectation on the part of both makers and audiences that there is such a thing as knowing definitively what a work of art means or stands for, aesthetically and politically. This strikes me as a blatant redefinition of art itself. If United by Music is trolling anyone, it's trolling the people who need this song to have one clear, official meaning. Maybe the point was to make a Rorschach blot that could mean anything, and then tell everyone that it was not that deep, and then enjoy watching the internet argue over what it all means. You may call that trolling. I just call it art. We'll see you next time. I have no idea what the talking pigeon means. If anybody has a theory, put it in the comments so I can get a good night's sleep.